Some people ruin their lives and never fully understand how or why they did it. And my wife, Francesca, is one of them. My name is Matthew. And if betrayal has ever blindsided a life that felt steady and earned, this will feel familiar. I thought my wife was my loudest cheerleader, the person who always lifted the end of the beam when my arms were shaking. I was wrong. This is the night I caught my wife cheating on me with my boss. And the moment the door opened, and I saw what I saw, I understood that nothing we'd built would survive it. For as long as memory serves, hard work has been the language I speak best. Put the hours in, fix what's broken, check the math twice. Eventually, something real will return the favor. I work at Sterling Enterprises, a place where Polish stands in the doorway and results sit at the table. A lot of people power down at 5. I stayed past the screensaver to swap sloppy for spotless, every report ironed, every strategy tight, every risk measured without bravado. I wasn't clock watching. I was investing in a future with my name on it. And for once, it felt like the equation was about to balance. Sterling's annual dinner isn't a party, it's an arena. Formal, exclusive, a room where promotions aren't emailed in the morning. They're announced in front of executives, clients, staff, and the sort of people whose nod can move 10 careers at once. Get called that night, and it means the company has said out loud that your work counts. I knew I was in the conversation. The title would be nice, the pay bump better. But what mattered was the runway, the ability to make decisions that mattered, to lead instead of just suggest. That night wasn't supposed to be just about me. It was supposed to be about us. If there was one thing I never questioned, it was this. Francesca was my person, my partner. We'd been together for years. She could find the right word in any room, and when I stumbled, she made belief feel possible again. I never doubted her loyalty. I never had a reason to, or so I thought. The venue looked exactly like a firm, like ours would rent glass and steel and a cost per chair you don't ask out loud. I felt proud of 100 things at once that night, but mostly I felt proud of who was holding my arm. Francesca has always found elegance without trying. That night, she didn't just wear a dress. She wore the room. I introduced her, and she did that thing she does. Listened, asked the right question, made a senior partner laugh like he didn't remember how. Even the high floors, the kind who pretend not to remember first names, drifted toward her like she'd triggered gravity. I stood there and let it wash over me. This is my wife. This is us. This is the life we've been building. Then the evening tilted a degree I pretended not to feel. I noticed how often she drifted toward Gerald, my boss. Influential, connected, the kind of respected that has weight, not just noise. He controls who moves up. He decides who stays where they are. At first, it played like courtesy. She's being polite, I told myself. She's networking. She's helping me without making it obvious. My gut said something else, a whisper I told to sit down. At one point, Gerald leaned in and said something I couldn't catch. She smiled in a way that pressed a question into my chest. I felt like an outsider at my own evening, standing beside a scene that wasn't meant to include me. Hours passed, like people do in rooms. Like that, small plates, smaller talk. Then she leaned in, placed a hand on my arm and said, "I need to take this," lifting her phone just enough to show a number with no name. "Sure," I said, because what else would I say? And she walked off into the moving furniture of executives and servers carrying champagne like it was a task with consequences. I didn't mark the first minutes. I nodded at market chatter, upcoming project hints, the usual. Then 20 minutes were gone. I looked for a familiar silhouette near the bar. Nothing. 5 more. I checked my phone, no message. Maybe it was loud outside, maybe bad reception. Maybe she ran into someone and got stuck in a corner conversation. I turned back to the group and tried to staple a smile to my face while the unease lifted its head. 5 more minutes, 30 since she left. Suspicion moved into my stomach like a tenant that paid cash. A nudge broke the loop. Eric colleague, not friend, but familiar enough to lean in, tilted his glass and said, "Lo, you're a patient man, bro. If my wife was that close to my boss, I'd have questions." I laughed because that's what you do when you don't have an answer. "What are you talking about?" He shrugged like he wasn't looking to be the reason. "Come on, man. We all see it. She's been cozy with Gerald all night, laughing, touching his arm, giving those looks." Words landed and didn't move. I checked my watch. 35 minutes. I scanned the room again. Bar, balcony, the edges where people go to breathe. No wife, no Gerald. The cold realization stood up. My heart decided walking would be better than standing still. I moved through the venue past conversations that faded into a single hum, past trays and smiles and the clink of glass. I didn't know where my feet were taking me until the hallway quieted and the world narrowed to doors with polite signs. Restrooms. I heard voices. Low, the kind that don't want to be heard. Then a sound that didn't need translation, a muffled moan that didn't belong to any conversation. I stopped inches from the door. "Francesca?" Silence. "Francesca, are you there?" A rustle, the unmistakable scramble of people putting an image back together too late. It told me everything a confession would fail to say. Patience found its edge and jumped. I pulled my phone out and hovered over the button that would bring security if I needed them, and before I pressed anything, the door creaked. She stepped out first. Hair not as composed as it had been, strands loose against a face too warm. The dress that had been a statement now spoke a different language, wrinkled in places that don't wrinkle sitting down. And then he stepped out behind her. Gerald. Tie loosened, top button open. His panic didn't wear tears. It wore calculation, what can be salvaged, and who needs to be called in the morning. For a long few seconds, we stood there and let the truth fill the space between us. My anger didn't explode. It evaporated. I unlocked my phone and hit record. "Today is the annual Sterling Enterprises dinner. This is my wife, Francesca, and my boss, Gerald. I just caught them making out in a restroom together." Gerald stiffened. Francesca's breath broke like a branch. "Matthew, please." I lifted my hand and cut the rest off. I didn't want theater. I didn't want a story. I held the camera steady for a few seconds more, enough time for their lie to wilt under fluorescent lights and a lens. Then I stopped the recording and walked away. No speech, nothing to fix, no apology to audition for. I left the room, the evening, and drove home alone. My phone buzzed against the passenger seat. Text, call again. I didn't look. An hour later, the door opened, and my wife came in, as if the house would make her small. Tear tracks cut through makeup, the kind of crying people do when they want it to count. She stood in the entryway like a question waiting to be answered. "Matthew, I held up a hand. "Don't." That was the whole sentence. We didn't argue. We didn't fill the night with noise. I sat on the couch watching a TV that could have been off for all the sense it made. She stood near the door and tried to manifest a gesture I didn't have. By the time I went to bed, the phone had bloomed with messages from colleagues who had heard a shape and wanted details to color it in. I ignored all of it. Morning arrived quieter than it deserved. I knew she was somewhere in the house, seated at the idea of us, like a person who missed the last train. I walked to the kitchen and found her at the table, fingers strangling a mug of coffee that had given up being warm. Her eyes were swollen and red. She didn't need a mirror to know what she looked like. "Matthew, please," she said, and the word cracked in the middle. I pulled a chair out, sat across from her, and let silence do its job. "Our marriage is already over," I said, when the moment had enough shape. I didn't raise my voice. Anger had spent itself somewhere between a door and a steering wheel last night. She flinched like I'd thrown something heavy. "No, Matthew, please. It was a mistake. I messed up. We can get through this. I love you." I laughed once, short and humorless. "You love me? Was it just Gerald, or are there others?" She didn't answer. She didn't even try. Silence is an answer in thicker ink than lies. I pushed my chair back and stood. Your stay in this house expires when the divorce is finalized. After that, we're done." Tears broke again, louder, body shaking like it could rattle the outcome into a different shape. I walked away and left her with the only thing that wasn't going to leave her: consequences. News moves in companies like ours the way electricity moves through wire fast, everywhere, humming even when you don't want to hear it. At first, it was glances and whispers, pity on the edges, curiosity in the middle. By Monday, the higher floors had the full circuit. The boss caught with an employee's wife at the firm's own event isn't just a personal failure, it's a brand problem. Sterling runs on integrity and performance, and Gerald's choice didn't scuff a line it drove over it. An internal investigation opened, and what they found didn't surprise me. Francesca wasn't the first. He'd used position the way some people use flattery pursuing women in spaces he shouldn't, camouflaging pursuit as mentorship, confusing consent with convenience. HR had turned its head at the right times in the past. This time, there were screenshots, statements, witnesses, a public moment nobody could ignore. By the end of that week, he was placed on leave. A week later, fired. Just like that, the man who weighed futures watched his own fall through the floor. I didn't celebrate. I didn't feel vindicated. By the time his fall completed, I was already walking somewhere else. Francesca didn't learn the right lesson. Even after the noise died down, even after the wreckage was cataloged, she still looked at me like she didn't know what had happened or how the math worked. Some people break what they stand on and never figure out what did the breaking. That wasn't going to be my problem anymore. Weeks passed, and the rhythm of ordinary returned in small pieces. Work steadied. My days built shapes that made sense again. Then one night, the phone lit with a sentence. "I miss you. Can we talk?" I read it. I deleted it. I moved on. No response, no closure meeting, no performance. She made her choices. I made mine. So what would you have done? Would you have tried to stitch it back together? Or walked like I did? No second chances, no monologues. Here's the truth that doesn't stop being true. Some betrayals don't unwind. Some people only understand what they've lost when it's already out of reach. And by the time that happens, you won't care enough to turn around. Thanks for listening. If this rang true, say what you would have done.